Imagine this, two of the world's fastest racing engines running at identical power outputs, yet separated by a single choice that could cost 1/10 of a second per lap or prevent a catastrophic meltdown on the hangar straight. The difference isn't fuel, it isn't wings. It's invisible, it's liquid, and it flows through a labyrinth of pipes that Ferrari and Mercedes route in almost opposite ways. So where exactly does that coolant go? And why are these two teams willing to fight so hard over millimeters of space in a shrinking engine bay? At Silverstone, where flat-out speed demands maximum downforce, cooling isn't a luxury, it's survival. Run your engine too hot for even one lap and you'll lose power. Push too hard to cool it down and you've sacrificed the aerodynamic grip that keeps you ahead. Mercedes and Ferrari have made opposite bets on this trade-off, and their choices ripple through every decision in the engine bay. One team compresses everything into a sandwich. The other stretches cooling lines around the edges like arterial pathways. At a high-speed circuit where temperatures spike and airflow is fiercely contested, those millimeters become tenths of a second. And tenths of a second are the difference between a podium and a pit lane disaster. Picture the radiator as a heat exchanger. Hot coolant flows in from the engine, passes through thousands of tiny aluminium fins, and cold air rips through those fins at over 300 kilometers per hour, stripping away the heat before the fluid cycles back into the engine. That cold air has to come from somewhere, and that's where circuits like Silverstone become brutally unforgiving. Mercedes' philosophy is compression. They stack their cooling radiators side by side in a sandwich formation, tucked tight behind the driver, minimizing the frontal area that air has to penetrate. Why? Because every square centimeter of bodywork that doesn't have to be bluff and tall can instead be sculpted into a sleek, aerodynamic shape. More grip, less drag, faster lap times. But squeeze a sandwich too tight, and the air path becomes a bottleneck. The coolant spends less time exchanging heat, and temperatures climb. Ferrari took the opposite road. They route their cooling lines in long, serpentine pathways around the flanks of the car, stretching the radiators wider and lower. This gives them maximum surface area for heat dissipation. More fin, more air contact, cooler temperatures, but it also widens the side pods, creates more obstruction to airflow, and chips away at downforce. At Silverstone, flat-out corners like Copse and 130R demand every milliwatt of downforce you can generate, because one loss of grip sends you off the tarmac. So Mercedes engineers ask, how little cooling surface can we get away with without the engine seizing? Ferrari asks, how much cooling area can we afford while still keeping the car planted? The coolant temperature you see on a driver's dash, often hovering between 85 and 95 degrees Celsius, isn't just a number. It's a reflection of that entire philosophy compressed into millimeters of aluminum and air. In 2018, Ferrari arrived at Silverstone as championship leaders, but their sidepod heavy cooling design proved catastrophic on the high-speed straights. Sebastian Vettel's engine hit 103 degrees Celsius during qualifying, dangerously close to critical, forcing the team to detune the power unit by nearly 15 horsepower to prevent failure. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, running their tightly packaged sandwich radiators, maintained stable 88-degree temperatures throughout the weekend, giving him the thermal margin to push harder in every corner. Vettel qualified third, Hamilton took pole, and that cooling delta, just 5 or 6 degrees Celsius, cost Ferrari 1/10 of a second per lap on a circuit where overtaking is nearly impossible. Fast forward to 2015, and the inverse lesson arrived. Mercedes' philosophy nearly backfired at Monaco, another high-downforce track, but one with zero straight-line speed, and instead brutal low-speed cornering heat soak. Their compact radiators couldn't shed enough energy through the tight hairpins and tunnel. Nico Rosberg's power unit climbed toward the danger zone, and Mercedes had to pit early, abandoning a winning strategy to save the engine from thermal shutdown. These weren't equipment failures or driver mistakes. They were design philosophies colliding with circuit geometry. and the team that read the track's thermal demands more accurately won the day. That's why cooling line routing isn't hidden plumbing. It's a bet on what the racetrack will demand of you, written in aluminum before you even arrive. So here's the thought experiment. Imagine you could swap cooling systems between these two cars for just one lap at Silverstone. Put Ferrari's larger, front-mounted radiators on the Mercedes chassis. Would Hamilton have gained or lost time? On paper, you'd think bigger cooling capacity always wins. But Silverstone's high-speed corners demand low drag, and that extra surface area creates a debt you pay every single lap. The answer isn't obvious, and that uncertainty is precisely why these teams agonize over millimeters of routing and radiator positioning, because the track, not the engineering textbook, has the final say. One choice saves 5 degrees, the other saves 0.05 of a second, and sometimes you simply cannot have both. So remember this, cooling at high downforce tracks is a choice between competing goods, not a right answer written in physics textbooks. Mercedes trades maximum cooling capacity for aerodynamic efficiency. They run hotter but stay faster down the straights. Ferrari accepts the drag penalty to keep coolant temperatures lower, betting their drivers can maintain focus and tire grip when others fade. And at Silverstone, where 6 flat-out seconds separate first from fifth, those millimeters of radiator placement cascade into lap times that matter. Now here's what I want to know. Which team's philosophy would you choose if you had to commit to one circuit for an entire season? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you want us to dig into cooling strategies at Monaco, Monza, or even wet weather routing, let us know. Subscribe for more deep dives into the engineering choices that win and lose world championships. We'll be back next week with how active aerodynamics are changing the game.